Welcome to the Dojo Marketing News Podcast by Exposure Ninja, and this week you're going to be talking about a great many things, including AI overviews. If you're not really sure what AI overviews are, they're pretty much like a typical search result, but on steroids, where you do a search and what comes back is quite in depth. So if you're doing a very complicated search, like how do I find the best qualification for expanding my skill set so I can do better as a pharmacist, ophthalmologist, I don't know, but it's going to give you more of a detailed result. Or you might be searching for I'm going for a separation and I want to know the best process to make sure that we share things equally, but I want to get the car and things like that. It'll give you better understanding of how to go about doing that. You get these legal results back that'll tell you, okay, you should do this and do that, and might pop up with a few suggestions on who you can go through that process with. Which brings me on to my story for this week, which is that you're starting to see a heck of a lot more AI overviews appear in really important search queries, and in particular, a few sectors where they're typically really protected by Google. So you have this thing called Your Money, Your Life, or which is like YMYL for short, which basically says Google is really protective of these because they don't want people risking their money, risking their life, and so on. So with these particular terms, like legal and health and financial, they tend to be protected well. It appears that like legal in particular is getting a lot of these AI overview results appear. And that's quite surprising because it's the ones that they should protect more than any others. So about 77%, 78% of search results in the legal sector are coming back with an AI overview, which is where I would expect them to go last. And all this research is coming via SE Ranking, which they do some fantastic studies, especially this past year, about AI overviews across 100,000 different search results, 500,000 search results, and so on. It's absolutely fascinating to see. I don't know, Charlie and Jess, who are also on the podcast as well, because it's not just me, as much as I am just going at it so far. Are you seeing a lot of AI overview results in your searches as well?
So I am, but the percentages that I'm seeing on these YMYL niches that you've bought, so legal, health, finance, and politics are the ones that are in the study, are wildly high. I'm definitely seeing a smaller percentage in general searches outside of these sectors. So it's pretty crazy to me to see such high percentages of searches coming back with AI overviews in these sectors, particularly because I would expect these ones to be where Google wants to not be doing so much experimenting as opposed to be serving the right information. So you would expect its algorithms and its AI to be learning more from other searches rather than pushing these ones as the leading ones. So yeah, I am seeing more, but this is also pretty wild to me.
What about yourself, Jess? Are you seeing a lot of more of the AI overviews as well?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I helped him with the videos for the YouTube channel and do quite a bit of research, and a lot of searches that I would have made previously that wouldn't have brought up an AI overview that I might even go to and be like, oh, I know if I search this, this is a great example of ones that don't are bringing it up. And I'm like, interesting. Yeah, I'm really surprised by this stat. I can tell you both are pretty surprised by it as well because of it being in that your money, your life niche. Like when you think about it, if somebody gets bad legal advice from Google's I feel like that's just an absolute disaster waiting to happen. Maybe that's just me, or maybe the whole point of it is that they hope that people won't take legal advice from that first point of contact. They might just be using it to see if they've got a case or see what their next steps are rather than fully jumping headfirst into a legal battle with no lawyer based on what they've read on Google's AI recommendations. So, yeah, I guess they must be seeing something that we're not in terms of the way that people are using it for them to be serving that many AI responses. Really is fascinating.
I I do wonder if because AI overviews are built off the back of a large language model, which you effectively feed in a lot of information, this corpus of information, whether an area as technical as like complex as legal, you can literally feed in textbook after textbook, law, legal paperwork after legal paperwork, and it can just sift through it and try and make sense of it in a kind of like in a similar way to is it OpenAI 4.0. It's like you change with Canvas, you can change the reading level down from like lawyer down to child. Simple enough that I can understand it. It's similar to that. Like you feed it all this information, it's complex area, and it can just make sense of it. So it's less likely to, because it's coming from legal text, coming from all these laws that have been made over time and different completed cases and so on. Whether it's much safer to do that rather than other areas where it's mostly opinion, or X business is writing about Y. In the legal space, it's based upon actual things that have been checked and signed off, and officially laws because they pass through senates and houses or commons and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it's a little bit of a safer subject, but it's interesting. In this study, they said that they are pulling from safe sources. So whenever you go through a result through the legal sector where a AI overview is appearing, it's mostly government files, websites that are being linked to just kind of corroborate what's been said as well. But generally, what we're seeing for AI overviews for all the sectors, and I'll just read through the numbers here. The health sector, the legal sector was 77.6%, so almost 78%, which is massive. Like there's a huge amount of search results returning an AI overview. And then there's health with 65%, which is still huge. And if you think back to like the Medic update, like 2018, massive push by Google to say you are not getting into the search results unless you can back up what you say with your expertise, your authoritativeness, your trustworthiness, all the kind of signals we need to see that you can be trusted as a medical source of information, medical source of answers. Then there's finance as well, 41%, slowly, coming up bit by bit. I'm actually surprised that one isn't a bit higher. Anyway, and politics, well, who cares about politics? It's not bring politics into the podcast, but it's really, really interesting. They are kind of pulling from these sources to kind of, fill up these AI overview results. But they're also taking from the web generally. So I know I said that they were, for the legal space, they might be taking stuff from, actual laws passed by governments, but they're pulling from the web as well. And this is why I think it's important to kind of think of what this means for you as a business, or if you're as a marketer or an SEO, what this means to you. Whether they're pulling from a corpus of information or the internet or whatever it is, it's on a larger scale. There are more businesses trying to do it. Google is doing it, OpenAI is doing it, Perplexity is doing it, Claude is doing it. Everyone's pulling from the web and sometimes from legal text because it's easy to access for them. You still will always need to get your brand, your business featured in all of these places. And whereas before you may have taken an approach of, okay, I can use some digital PR and some content marketing and guest posting and various other things, to get my brand featured in various places. Beforehand, you might have been like, okay, I need to get these like 15 different mentions in the next month, 3 months, whatever it is. Now you've got to think way bigger. You got to think, here are all the different places that Google et al. Are pulling, all their information from. I need to be in all of them now. I can't just be in this one and that one. You've got to be in all 4, 15, 125 places. You've got to do it on a much bigger scale than you ever thought you were going to have to do before. Which is where, like, Charlie, I believe you were on the last podcast talking about GEO and what that means. I think that's pretty much what I'm covering now. For anyone who hasn't listened, perhaps you could expand on what GEO is.
Yeah, so GEO is generative engine optimization, like SEO, but with a G. And what we're starting to see is more of an evolution of SEO where marketers are thinking ahead. And business owners, they're thinking, if AI search is becoming more and more common, so that's the AI overviews, but that is also searches in chatbots, so ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, all of those. Then how is my business getting recommended in there, or what businesses are getting recommended for the same sort of searches as me? And GEO is essentially the techniques you would use in order to get there. I would say at the moment, almost all of those, they're hypotheses, they're testing theories of what we think is going to work. And what you're just talking about there, Dale, is we know so far that digital PR on a wider scale, so not just in terms of link building, which we might think of more for traditional SEO, but in terms of mentions of your business, in terms of reviews, directory listings, mentions on social, mentions on Reddit, all of those sorts of brand and business mentions, recommendations are going to be feeding into that, as well as the structure of your content and how easy it is for AIs to read, because they're pattern matching. So they're looking for content that's got a certain pattern that they can very easily then pull from, which is possibly why we're seeing some of the AI overviews not always pulling the most up-to-date information, because if it's actually really difficult for them to match the pattern, they might not quite be getting it, which the hope is, of course, that they will get it and they will make search much easier. It's actually a little bit scary, and I think there's a big ethical question here going on. If there's such a high percentage of AI overviews showing for finance, so the figure you gave was around sort of 41, 42%. My headline is actually that a study has found AI overviews on financial queries, 43% of the answers being given are showing incorrect or misleading information in that finance sector, which is a scary, scary thought. This is just a micro study though. So this was done by the College Investor and it was US based. So it's a lot of US finance related searches. And what they did was run 100 personal finance searches, asking things about tax, asking about investing, students' loans, pension contributions in the US, how all of that works. And then they just looked at what percentage of those were giving correct, incorrect, and misleading answers. And so 43% coming out as inaccurate, which for a your money, your life, a YMYL sector, that's quite scary. I think we would all agree. What it seemed to struggle with was complex financial topics where there were nuances. So it didn't really have problems coming back with very easy questions like what is a student loan? But what it did have problems coming back with was outdated student loan repayment information, which I don't know the US as well as the UK, but there's change. The way student loans are structured changes quite differently. You might be on a payment plan 1, 2, 3, depending on when you went to university. Also coming back with incorrect IRA contribution limits, which changes state by state in the US. So there's a significant need to understand where that searcher is based for the information it's giving you, and also misleading tax advice, which I think none of us would like to think that we've got misleading tax advice from the internet, because that's a scary place to be. But basic financial topics, so definitions, simple questions like what is a bank transfer, what's a wire transfer, didn't have any trouble with. Probably the things that we would be less concerned about when we're making decisions though, compared to some of these more nuanced topics, which led me down a rabbit hole. So I tested ChatGPT for some tax related queries as well, giving it specific figures, example scenarios as if I was, making a certain kind of tax claim or had a certain kind of tax situation. And it also made mistakes in its advice. So I don't think this is confined to the AI overviews on Google. I think this is a struggle that all of the AIs are potentially having with pulling the right information, the most up-to-date information from the web, and also making the relevance to who that user is. But particularly on things like ChatGPT, where it's relying on us to contextualize, I'm based in the UK, I'm talking about this tax year, I'm et cetera, to give all of that. But some of the mistakes it made for me were drawing like older tax bracket information from previous financial years, so attributing the wrong things, not being able to calculate that percentage step differently in tax information. So things that would really, on a personal level, sort of affect people's tax returns, which is, not what you want to hear, I don't think. Understandably, the result of this study was calls to disable some of the AI generated overviews for financial queries to prevent misinformation. I think that's extremely unlikely to happen, especially with the figures that you were sharing there, Dale, about how many searches are returning AI overviews. So based on that, I don't think they were going to roll back the volume. I think that the ethical thing for Google and any type of AI search to do would be looking at ways to improve how those answers are generated and making that a pretty big priority. In terms of if you're a business or a marketer in one of these sectors, so finance, legal, healthcare, politics, not to go into politics too heavy. I think it's a pretty huge opportunity though. If your content is really well structured, up to date, optimized, and like properly vetted, you've got someone reviewing it who has experience in certain part of finance, a certain part of legal, a certain part of healthcare, you could really put your stake in the ground here as like a go-to reliable place for financial information and start plugging a gap that AI is really, really struggling with. I'd be interested in both of your thoughts on this though, because I think there's quite the ethical dilemma opening up.
I think my initial thought, which is completely ridiculous, but you know, back in like the 2000s when there used to be those adverts on TV with the hedgehogs about crossing the road, and people used to come into school and be like, this is how you cross the road. I almost feel like we need that for adults, for AI, and be like, if you're going to use AI, this is how you need to be using it. Like, businesses need to be paying people to come in and be like, this is, if you're using AI, you can't just say how to do tax return. You have to say, I am, this person who lives, well, not too many personal details, but I live in the UK. I know that my tax code is this, or that I'm in this tax bracket. I'm self-employed. I have this. Like, people need to maybe be taught, because if Google aren't going to roll it back, we kind of need to take it into our own hands a bit. And I feel like this is like one of the only ways we can do it is like sit the grown-ups down and be like, that AI picture you saw on Facebook isn't real, and here's how to tell. But then it also applies to things like this, where it's a bit more serious than whether they think this tiny cow that can fit in a hand is actually a baby cow or not. I think this is a lot more serious and could really impact people who maybe, are asking how to invest and have absolutely no idea and end up losing everything because the information about that investment came from like r/gambling, on Reddit, or came from just places that just aren't correct. It's a real worry, to be honest. But I think Charlie is absolutely right in what she said about like, if you are doing this content well, you have a real opportunity for Google to be scrambling and going, we need to find the people who are really writing financial content that has a lot of backing from well-known institutions or professionals. You don't necessarily have to be that institution writing it, but as long as you're referencing them in your content or getting somebody from that institution to peer review what you're saying, then I think that could be really helpful. But yeah, it's a little bit of a worry.
It's interesting you should say about them not probably not going to roll it back anytime soon. Maybe here and there they will. Just today there was another like screenshot on like video shared of somebody finding an AI overview mid scroll. So like you're going through your search result and it would come up further down with like, typically you might have an accordion where you have to open it up to get more information, or people also ask and things like that. There was like an AI overview like result halfway down with like,
Yeah, I've seen it that far down as well, quite a few times.
Interesting. It seems to be expanding rather than receding, which is an interesting thought. But also interestingly, is this idea of having this first party data and you taking whatever information that you have on hand and putting that into the world, as long as it's been cleaned up properly. I think that presents a bit of a challenge because it's not easy to do. Like, first of all, to make sure that you've got the right kind of data and that it's clean enough that you can make good good reads on what it means and how that might be useful to other people. There was a pretty bit of a mess on LinkedIn last week when Hockey Stack, who are a B2B software company, is it B2B software? Doesn't matter. You can go search for them and help their branded search a bit. But they put out a report about how many touch points there are between, via LinkedIn specifically, between first impression and then eventually becoming a lead, and then from lead to closure and stuff like that. And they had massive numbers, very scary, hundreds of impressions required, scanning through this, just going through a LinkedIn feed and what have you. And even if the numbers are like 10% true, they're still scary. Even if it's like 10 impressions, it's still a lot for some businesses. But the feedback from the community was, your data is off. Like, you have clearly, like, a data analyst hasn't seen this. This is a marketing team with data saying, oh, look what we spotted, and creating a report and stuff and saying, this is really cool, you should know about this. Oh, and by the way, use hockey stack. That might be okay. That might fly in some circles, but in this period of time where everything has to be crystal clear that it's okay and genuine and can be trusted, it's really important that you make sure that the data matches up. And I think that some businesses will struggle to accomplish that in-house. Even if they go with like a contractor, or they can come and speak to us, and we got experience in that area. I was just thinking earlier about Hannah Whitehouse, who did a fantastic webinar for us just recently. I had a conversation with us and was talking about how she took some data and turned it into a great piece of marketing. That piece of marketing is doing really well and helping with the search results. But she knows what she's doing. She's got that skill set and she can do it exceptionally well, and the results are crystal clear to see. But that's a very specific skill set, and I think it's going to be hard for businesses to do that, even though I would incredibly so recommend that they do utilize the data that they have. So I can see that challenge being more present for businesses going forward.
I think it's a bit of a testament to the importance of having experts operating their AI as well. Like, this is when it comes to SEOs, copywriters, whoever from marketing teams and from businesses who are using AI to write content. We know already that AI is getting better and better. You can produce better content with ChatGPT now than you could a year ago, and we expect that to continue. Will it always give you the correct information? No, it won't. And I think it goes to the importance of people actually checking any data that they're feeding it, because it's great at pulling out data and trends. Is it definitely giving you the right stuff? Like, all of that quality assurance and editorial that needs to go into good content creation, good SEO, still needs to be going on with content here. And I think, we're asking ethical questions of Google. We always are. There's ethical questions on businesses as well about the content they put out, and the importance of having accurate information in there, which I think speaks to your point, Jess, about peer reviews. You don't have to have all of the experts in-house. You have to have someone who's like super switched on and paying attention to what they're doing, what they're writing, and having peer reviews from an expert who can double, triple fact check what you're writing, especially in YMYL, is so important now.
On that point of distinguishing between what's true, what's accurate, and what may not be, and what may be fake, Jess, I believe your story this week is touching on the idea of fakeness across the internet.
Yeah, I think this is partially spawned from AI and the fact that anybody can do this on scale now. But I think this has been a problem for quite a long time. But basically, the FTC has put new rules into place, like put them into law, about fake reviews specifically. So I'm sure we've all seen the fake reviews that will come up on places like Amazon, whether they are fake positive reviews or actually quite frequently fake negative reviews sent by competitors. So the way that the FTC is kind of categorizing this is reviews and testimonials that misrepresent that they are by someone who does not exist, for instance, AI generated fake reviews, or who did not have actual experience with the business. So this covers like whether they are AI generated reviews, as well as like, paying people to review bomb different products or books or anything like that. But then also we've seen kind of a trend that I've seen a lot of sometimes smaller brands, but not always, using celebrity endorsements that aren't real, but kind of being like, oh, it's a joke, and like, it's always very serious until they got called out, and then it was like, oh, a silly joke that our audience would totally understand. So I saw this in the wild recently, actually. When I say in the wild, I mean just like in my circles rather than like as part of the marketing sphere, I guess. Basically, I saw Ghost Keyboards post an apology to their Instagram story, and I was like, what's this about? And they were basically apologizing to a massive tech YouTube channel called Linus Tech Tips, saying like, we're really sorry that we use your likeness to promote our keyboards. And they'd like tagged the like main account for Linus, and also said they said we will refund anybody who brought a product based on this endorsement. And what they'd done is they sent an email out with a picture of Linus where he's holding one of their keyboards, where they'd AI'd or photoshopped a smile on him as well, like a toothy grin. And it was basically saying like, I love this keyboard. I think it was him saying like, oh, it's my favorite keyboard. And it's a controversial creator's keyboard anyway. So I think that kind of added to the layers. And obviously people would make purchases thinking that this big tech YouTuber has said that this $50 keyboard is his absolute favorite, because they're going to be like, well, that's a steal, you know? Like, so yeah, the fact they actually had to issue an apology and refund anybody who spent money based on that endorsement is massive. And it was, as I said, it was very public. They had to very publicly apologize despite the image only being sent via email. But then we see other situations like Trump or Trump's team AI generated images of Taylor Swift fans wearing t-shirts that say like Swifties for Trump or whatever. And I know you might be thinking, who's daft enough to fall for these images? But I would spend like 5 minutes on Facebook with some slightly older relatives to see the kind of things they're interacting with, or even just look at some of the things they've sent you, because I receive quite a lot of messages each week of cute, fun things that are simply not real, not possible, not happening. You know, I've even seen people like in the crochet subreddit being like, my family member has sent me an AI generated crochet pattern that they want me to make, and it's not possible because it's just AI generated. Anyway. So another thing that was mentioned as well was insider reviews and testimonials. So we have also been seeing an increase in influencers who are invested in companies who are then kind of giving endorsements of said companies as if they're just a fan or if they're just an influencer, whereas they're actually paid to do it. So Stephen Bartlett was accused of this because he was promoting Huel and Zoe as if he was like just a customer and just loved them, when actually it appeared he had a financial stake in both companies. So as much as this kind of on the surface, I think it's being seen as very AI news, I actually took it quite differently and saw it as like, this is kind of people protecting kind of their own endorsements, really. Like, I think celebrities don't like it. I think, you know, people don't like it when there's fake testimonials on a website. They don't know what they can trust. So I think this is a very welcome thing. And if you are a marketer who's panicking about this, then you're probably doing some stuff you shouldn't be doing. So, you know, if you take a good route and, you know, you're getting reviews from companies, from customers that are legit, then you're fine. I would say if you do find that you suddenly get an influx of like fake reviews, really negative ones, report that. Potentially the FTC do actually have, obviously if you're in America, you can report it directly to them. But then that will kind of help protect you if you act on it right away and you're like, this thing is happening, because they know you're not going to pay for negative reviews on your own account. So just don't be afraid to speak up. Like, you're not going to get penalized for it. It's better to be open and honest and get it sorted as soon as you can. But yeah, I don't know if either of you have any thoughts on this, if you have seen anything out in the wild, or if you think that this is going to be something that can be enforced as well.
I'm going to say that they will always be combating this. Like, I can't see really a point where we put the cork back in the bowl. Like, you can add in laws, and they will most certainly be taking people to be caught about fake this and fake that, fake ads, fake reviews. But yeah, that cork ain't going back in. Like, it's. I think you said like many times before, Jess, you almost need like a human created badge that just goes on everything. Like, you know, it almost reminds me of like when Twitter's, I'm not calling the other thing, Twitter's verification badge used to really actually like mean something. You almost need that for like every kind of brand or business associated account online. Like, it should all automatically, like, you can only do that kind of post if you've been verified through 2 or 3 different things, like, you know, upload your tax returns. I don't know, like, you know, here's my business number, you know, my company house number, and so on. And that's the only way you're allowed to do ads. And I don't know, there's just no way back, really. I think maybe people will eventually grow used to it and be able to detect between real and fake, but the reality is people still get hoodwinked by like Photoshops from 10 years ago. So now it's incredibly easy to do. I don't know. It's a noble effort from the FTC. We shall see how that actually results in any difference and change in how some marketers behave. What do you think, Charlie?
I agree with both of you, to be honest. I think that it's good that these efforts go in, and I think that legislation will always be a good thing in terms of it's going to impact the way some people behave, which is important. I feel like the moral of the story is for marketers, like, don't leave your ethics at the door when you go to work. We should still be showing up in marketing in the way that we would show up in our personal lives, with the same level of ethics to what we're doing, and thinking about that as well, because a lot of these feel like cheap tricks. And will they have an impact? Yeah, maybe. Will it be short lived? Hopefully. And as you say, Jess, the people who are going to be most affected by this, the majority of the time, are actually our most vulnerable people in our communities and in our society, because it is going to be our older generation who are less used to seeing, particularly with the AI side, AI generated imagery that isn't the reality. And I feel like it's almost the same as scams. It's very akin to telephone scams and all that kind of thing, where younger people are more aware of it, they grow up with it, they get used to it, they see it more. But it's actually going to be really, really difficult for everyone to identify this kind of thing. And like you say, Dale, it's the kind of thing where people do make mistakes, where they end up getting hoodwinked by things. And yeah, in general, I think my feeling on it is that I hope most people can switch their ethics on and keep it turned on, and not follow these kind of unethical marketing strategies too far down the river.
Yeah, 100%.
Fingers crossed. I just thought a couple of years ago, somebody close to me got completely like hoodwinked by an Instagram ad that was made to look like it would do the marriage allowance thing, like a marriage rebate. I don't know what it was, but it was like, yeah, do the thing, and it looked very official. Like the papers came through and they all got signed and sent back and so on. Like they had all like the logo they used was like a near identical copy to like the style of the style guidelines of the UK digital agency and stuff like that. And yeah, it was very effective, very very effective. And doesn't matter how well some of these people are used to, even like very internet savvy people, internet savvy generation can very easily just get hoodwinked by it and lose money. As I stare
Absolutely.
and cry over the money I lost. It wasn't my fault, goddamn. Somebody else. Anyway.
Dale, why don't you lighten the mood by telling us about that Tesco campaign?
Yeah, okay, I'll do it. Okay, so if you're watching this and you have no idea what Tesco is, it's a supermarket chain in the UK. Actually, it's present across the world. I remember I went to visit when I was in Malaysia. Massive superstore, like 2 floors. There's like hairdressers downstairs and everything. Amazing, really, really cool. Anyway, Tesco has done a huge campaign. It's very recently come out last couple of days, but with BBH London, which is a big advertising company and creative. And the campaign is effectively billboards. I think they're mock-ups. I haven't seen any actual photos of these yet, but like
Yeah, I
mock-ups.
can never tell with these campaigns whether they are mock-ups or not. It always infuriates me. Maybe they need to talk to the FTC.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting because they're always from the same shot in the same places. So I was just thinking earlier, like there's somebody walking to work on the way to wherever in London, underneath the bridge where these billboards are. There's just somebody constantly there in the same spot every day taking new billboard pictures. It's just like a permanent DSLR just set up there for agencies. But if you haven't seen the ad, it's effectively mostly white space, and then there is 5 blue dashes underneath with a vegetable or fruit or some food item across the top, and each piece of grocery item is supposed to represent a different letter of the alphabet and should therefore say the word or brand name Tesco. I certainly would recommend going and looking at it because my description of it does not do it justice, but a lot of people are talking about it, and I find it interesting because some people are knocking it and they're like, I hate this, I don't understand it, and I have to think too much. And other people are like, this is absolutely amazing. This is a perfect example of how to use brand well, how to use your codes well, and so on. I just find it really interesting, and I'm really curious what the two of you think.
I wonder if Charlie's going to say the same as me, but there's a lot of adverts like this that go really viral. And I don't know if they actually go viral with consumers or they just go viral with marketers who are like, that's fun. Like, I don't know if seeing that advert is going to make me want to shop at Tesco or if I just wouldn't care. Like, I feel like I see a lot of adverts like this and I'm just like, okay. Like, and I do wonder if it's one of those where marketers are like, wow, that's really cool. That's so clever. There's so many layers to it. And like, you know, how cool, and their brand is so strong. And then like if I spoke to like 100 people in the street and was like, what do you think of this advert, I think they'd be like, I didn't really think that much about it, I don't really care. Maybe that's just me being a bit cynical. Like I think the product photos are really nice and I think it's a bit of fun, but I can also imagine it was a lot of money. It kind of has the same feeling of when you see brands spend like 25 million on a new logo and it's just the old logo, but with like one line removed and a slightly different Pantone blue. And you're like, oh, great. So yeah, Charlie, I'm intrigued to know, because you said to begin with, you're like, I don't like this. So
I
I'd love to know what
hate
you think.
this. I absolutely hate this. I think it's a really silly set of ads. And you know what? Silly can be good. I'm not anti-silly, but I think it's too nonsensical, like you say, Jess, for someone to get it quickly. The thing they're going to get is the brand recognition. If they're already someone who shops at Tesco, yes, they've got the brand recognition. But what we're seeing is like some of the designs, so they've got different grocery items, but like there's an O at the end with a picture of oyster mushrooms. Well, my brain initially went to mushrooms. So no, it didn't go there. And the same, there's an eclair which is pointing upwards. So it looks like an I or an L, but it's actually an eclair, so it's E. And it's like, am I playing a cryptic puzzle game to understand what this supermarket ad is about? Like, I feel like I am, and I don't want to be. So, if that, like, the question of these ads is like, is it going to compel higher footfall into their store, more orders of groceries online? Like, I really just don't think it's going to. Is it going to make more people spend a little bit of time like trying to puzzle the acronym out? Yeah, probably, because they've got nothing else to do on the commute. I don't know that it's really going to translate. That's my opinion. What do you think of it though, Dale?
So this has come across my timeline during a week where I've listened to watched 25 different Mark Ritson and Rory Sutherland videos. So I'm very brand heavy now in terms of like where my mind is at. So immediately I was like, yeah, I can see the brand salience, the codes are there, all these words that have entered my vocabulary in the past like week. I think it's brilliant. I mean, like when I think of it like that. So okay, right. I was listening. So earlier on today, I was listening to Mark Ritson was talking in a university about like the biggest marketing missteps in 2022 and stuff like that. And we're talking about there's different kinds of campaigns. Like there's the short-term performance-based campaign, and then there's a long-term brand campaign. Like how you manage the two together, and how one can impact the other, or sometimes they don't. But generally, the performance should pull from the long in order to deliver a result. So, you would have, as an example, the Coca-Cola Christmas campaign, which is about the holidays are coming and the lorries and blah blah blah. That's a long-term brand play, and then the short is the every year they bring it back, and as soon as you hear that music, it's Christmas for some people and so on. So for this, it's like this isn't a performance-based play. This is just a long play. This is like reestablishing the brand, and it comes back to those assets, the codes of like you see the 5 blue dashes, and it's Tesco, and it's about brand salience and how much that brand appears in your mind before you make a decision on when you make a purchase. Like if I'm going to go and purchase ibuprofen or something like that, a particular brand will stand out more in my mind when I go to make that purchase than some other options. So, for example, we were away, a wonderful time at Centre Parks, which was lovely, and went to the shop, and I could have bought the 60p ibuprofen for when I wasn't feeling great, but I paid for the £2.50 Nurofen because I'm a brand sucker, and I'm like,
I
I
do
know
not care.
this
I would
I
rather
for
would
be pissed.
and
I would
target.
never pay for the Nurofen branding. But
my
maybe
head is
like
more effective. My brain says it's more effective than
it's
people.
not though.
And I'm like, yeah, cool. So it's the same thing. You see that, and I think most people, without having been told how to figure out which letter is which and whatever, would have seen the 5 dashes and said, "That's Tesco. I recognise that as Tesco,"
Yeah.
and that's the
But is there
long.
much more to it than that?
No, that's it. It's just that. It's just a reminder, like this is a brand that you know, and it has history. It has history as a business, but has history for you because you recognized it. It's not encouraging you to go to Tesco tonight. It's encouraging you to choose Tesco the next time you go shopping. It's not like an immediate thing, but it's like when the time comes, you could go to do your shop, you're more likely to pick Tesco over another. But I think it's almost like you say, Jess, is it just for marketers to talk about?
Yeah.
Quite possibly like surreal, you know.
I'm
Do you
just
know
not.
when? Sorry, do you know when this does work? I think it does work when there's one in close proximity. I think I'm a bit jaded because I really like Tesco, but it's not really nearby. I have to drive to go to Tesco, whereas I can walk to Asda and I can walk to Morrison's. So I guess if I was to see this ad near me, I'd be like, well, great, I have to get in the car to go to that, which, you know, I'm in a lucky position that I can walk to the other two. But maybe if it's nearby, it could work. And then it's kind of like, oh, I just saw this advert and now there's Tesco. Actually, I did want to pick up my tomato, eclair, spring onions, coconut, oyster mushrooms. So I might as well go do that. So I think in proximity, it could work. Like I can, you know, there's plenty of times when I've seen a fast food ad and been like, oh, I could really do with one of those now. And then, you know, round the corner, there is one. And I think it works quite well in that context. But obviously these kind of the pictures that we've seen of it are kind of ambiguous, and like you said, there's that classic under the bridge walking by with kind of the exposure, the long exposure on the car that's always going past, so it doesn't give a lot of context. But I think if it was near a location, you know, near a Tesco, I think it could work hugely effectively. But I do wonder if it is, like you said, Dale, like surreal, where actually I know a lot about them, but I think they're a little bit expensive and I might not necessarily actually go for them. I might use their name in the search when I go cheaper alternatives to surreal cereal. But I don't know if it would be enough. But then that's just who I am as a consumer. And Dale, you've obviously said that you're the kind of consumer who would pay more for something that has but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because there are certain products that I do think I would pay more.
Don't worry, I'm happy about
But yeah, it's very interesting.
I'm just not
Well, I'm not
convinced,
going to make
you know.
this. Sorry, Charlie.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say I'm not convinced. Like short game, long game. The game is get people through the door ordering from your supermarket. Does this do it? Like, does it tell me it's a cheap brand? Does it tell me it's a high-end brand? Does it tell me their produce is better quality than Ocado or whatever it is a differentiating on? It doesn't say any of that. Does it help me remember the brand? Maybe, but only because I already know the brand. So yeah, are they, to your point, Dale, like they're playing a game of the memorability of their brand against other supermarkets, but whether that actually helps in the short or the long term, I'm just really not convinced about.
I don't know. Part of me wonders if this is just like the starter, like the preparation for the hurricane of Christmas Tesco ads that we're all about to experience. Like this is just to get your mind in that place and ready, of like already thinking about Tesco when the Christmas campaigns like fully kick in. I don't know,
Do you think
maybe.
they're going to put crackers for the sea?
maybe. Cool. All
Tinsel
right.
for the tea?
That's a great idea. I love that. And we're going to wrap this one up. But before we do, I just want to ask you which story you like the most, so we can turn it into tasks for people to go away and do. What are you thinking? Okay, in that case, we're going to pick the the story about the AI overviews being everywhere and you doing something about it. So,
That
Jess,
was going to be my pick, actually.
Jess, what task can marketing managers take from this story?
I think really it's about giving a bit more credibility to your content. So if you're not really making use of like really good author bios with your content, I would say make use of that. Something that I see a lot over content is having author bios that show expertise, right? And they show that you understand the subject matter. As well as, I really appreciate it when I see any article that's got kind of that is like your money or your life thing, and it has that strip along the top that says this has been reviewed by, and then somebody with a bunch of letters behind their name. That makes me feel pretty confident about what I'm reading. So I would say look for any opportunities to do that and embrace it. Like, it might take a little bit longer, but I think once you have a relationship with somebody who is a professional, and this could be somebody within your company as well, once you have that relationship, then it gets a lot easier to do. So yeah, I'd say that's the main one for me.
I love that. Charlie, which tasks can business owners take from this story?
I think I've got two. The first one is, if you are a business owner and you've either got a marketing team, some kind of copywriter, or if you're flying solo, actually taking stock of the content you've got and the content that you want to produce, particularly if you're in a YMYL niche, and thinking very carefully about that, I think is important. The second one, I think, as a business owner, feeds into that ethical question, and actually a company and the people working in it take a lead from that business owner as to the ethics that they bring to work as well. So I think showing up and role modeling and setting out the expectations for the kind of ethics that you want within the content you create, the marketing that you put out for your company, is a really important thing for business owners. And I don't think they need to make that complicated. I think that can be bringing it up as a point in a meeting. It's about the way you talk about things, the way you talk about the topics that are going to be covered in your marketing, the way you talk about the strategy of the business and what the business is trying to achieve for its customers communicates that. So most likely most business owners are doing that already. And I think expanding that to actually look at the content your business is producing is a really, really important thing for business owners to take away from this.
Those are brilliant. I really like those two tasks. Well, if you're looking for an extra task to do this week, you can go to exposureninja.com/review, and you can ask for a free website and marketing review for your business, and we can have a look at the impact of AI overviews to you and what that could mean for your SEO strategy for 2025. And thank you very much for joining us. If you'd like to hear more, head over to exposureninja.com/podcast. There are almost 400 episodes that you can listen to. And if you'd like to reach us, you can email us at podcast@exposureninja.com and let us know what you think and feel about this week's podcast and all of the others as well. That'd be great to hear from you. Thank you very much, and see you all next week. Goodbye.
Bye.